Hello. This module is about idea screening and evaluation. So far, we have discussed a lot about idea generation, that how you can generate the ideas, and we have discussed various techniques and different mechanisms how to generate the idea. Now we are going to see how to evaluate the idea or how to validate the idea. So we are going to see a few things, and later on in the coming modules, we will go into more detail about the market research, creating financial feasibilities, and the other stuff. So why idea screening is important? Most of the startup ideas, they fail because of so many different factors. One of the very important factor is that there is no real market demand. We think it's a good idea and a lot of people they are going to buy, but eventually we come to know that there is no real market demand once we get it developed and try to roll it out. And why there is no real market demand? There could be various reasons. One of the reason could be that the timing is very poor. Either it's early or it's quite late as well. It's a very common thing that the people they get inspired and they come up with something, but at that time it's no longer much in demand. Similarly, it could be because of a very weak business model or the technology that we are using. It's not solving that problem and creating problems for that. So the idea screening, it helps us in the early stages of the whole startup process to validate that idea and to filter the weak ideas at a very early stage. So what we do is at a startup idea evaluation process could be in this form, that first we generate ideas, and after generating ideas, we do the idea screening or idea validation. And for that, actually, we require more steps as well. And again, we keep on validating or checking our ideas. So we conduct market research, and then we do the feasibility analysis, and then we develop a complete business model. What are the key questions once we want to evaluate some idea? So the entrepreneurs, they must ask that whether that idea it really solves some real problem or not. Because again, we have discussed it earlier that as an idea generator, we always think, okay, this idea is going to be really in demand, and this seems to be a very good idea, but we have to actually validate, get that idea validated. So we need to check it with the customers and with the other stakeholders that whether the idea is really going to solve a problem or not. And we also need to see that is there a target market, and that target market needs to be sufficient enough so that the idea and the startup eventually should be sustainable and scalable as well. Then we need to see that can the technology which is available provide a competitive advantage over the other competitors or not, and also whether the idea is financially viable or not. So the major criteria for evaluating our business ideas are we have to see the market demand, which is going to check that whether the market really needs that product or not. And then we have to see the innovation perspective as well, in which we are going to see that whether the idea is really unique or not, or there are existing solutions available in the market. Then we are going to check the feasibility, and there are different types of feasibility which we are going to see at the end of this module, and which in general we are going to see that whether it can be implemented or not. And then we are going to see the profit potential, that is it going to generate revenues or not. And once we know, okay, yes, it's going to generate the profit, then we have to also see that whether it's scalable or not as well, because the startup, once it grows and we become profitable and break the break-even point, and we are in some sort of a profit, we have to see it that whether it's getting more scalable or not. That is a very important perspective. And then eventually we have to see the sustainability as well, because it could happen that an idea initially got a good traction, it goes into some sort of a profit, and then eventually it becomes scalable as well. But after some period of time, we face challenges related to the sustainability, and the idea the startup becomes out of the market. So we need to see long-term sustainability of a startup as well. So we have this idea screening funnel in which we start with so many different ideas. We come up with those ideas, then we screen those ideas, we select some of those ideas, then based on those ideas, we conduct market research in which we do a lot of activities, and then eventually at the end, we come up with very few strong ideas which are going to solve some problem. So if you look at the idea generation and innovation funnel, so we start from this left side, we generate a lot of ideas. So we started by collecting information, and we capture a lot of ideas, we generate a lot of ideas. Based on those ideas, we generate some sort of a concept. So we become narrower and narrower. So we develop some concepts in which we are trying to come up with the design or a shape up of that idea. Then we define its feasibility and we develop the prototype. So we make it more refined. So once it becomes more refined, so it's going more into that funnel, and then we go into the bugger, and we start expanding by we first do the deployment of that prototype and we test it, and then we deploy it. The customers, they started using it, and then based on the customer feedback after they start using our product, we refine it further, we expand it more, and then we bring more and more features into that product, and we go more into the exploration stage. So we are doing more and more commercialization, we are reiterating, we are doing a lot of activities related to this. Then a very important perspective about this one is that it's the market research. So what is the market research? Market research is the organized process of gathering and then analyzing and interpreting the information. Okay, so what we do in the market research is first we collect or gather some sort of information about the market that we are targeting. Then we analyze that information, and then eventually we interpret that information into some meaningful way. And very important perspective of that data or information collection is about the market, and then the customers, and then the competitors, because all of them, they are very important. So we need to see what is the target market, who are our customers, and who are our competitors, and eventually based on that we go and we develop our business strategy. So the market research, it helps entrepreneurs to assess the feasibility and different types of feasibility, like the technical one, importantly, then financial, market, and other feasibilities. It helps us to understand the customer needs, what the customer they want, and then it helps us analyze the market demand, how much is the market, how much is the market size, how much is the sustainability, and all these things. And then helps us to study the competitors. So we do the competitor analysis, we see who are our competitors, what sort of features they are offering, what are our added advantages over them. Then we validate the startup idea, and then we reduce investment risks as well. So this is done based on the market research. There are two basic types of market research. The number one is primary research, and the second one is the secondary research. Primary research focuses on collecting new data. It could be through surveys, interviews. On the secondary research focuses on using the existing data, which has been collected by someone else, and we use their industry reports or academic reports, etc. So if we talk about the market research, there are so many different methods. We conduct customer interviews, and these interviews can be formal interviews or other type of interviews. Then we can conduct surveys. We can have focus group discussions. We can also engage the customers in the product testing, and based on that, based on the customer feedback, we collect the insights and we improve and iterate our products. So there can be different tools which we can use into this. We can have Google Forms, we can use SurveyMonkey, we can use other analytical and data collection tools. We can also use the prototypes for the customer testing and then getting their feedbacks. Then in the secondary market research, we use the data collected by someone else, and we use that data to analyze the market. So it can come from different sources. It can be from some academic research. It can come from some government statistics or government reports or industrial reports, some white papers, or some from some very professional market research firms. So it can come from so many sources. If you have to understand the market size, it represents that how much is the total potential demand for a product or a service. So it helps us to understand or to determine how much is the potential is there for our startup. There are three terms associated with this: TAM, SAM, and SOM. TAM is total available market, and its size is largest market. So an example is global online education market. Then we have SAM, serviceable available market, and then SOM is serviceable obtainable market. One is available market and the other one is obtainable market that we can immediately obtain. So the size of the serviceable available market is the target market which we are trying to target. It could be a regional online tutoring. And then serviceable obtainable market is the startup share, like immediately once we have a startup. So example is student using your platform. So here we are talking about a learning system or a tutoring system in which the TAM is going to be the total global online education market. Okay, you may try to target that thing, but that might be initially very at a distant level. So you can keep in mind the target market, which is the SAM, which is regional online tutoring. For example, you want to launch a tutoring startup in, so you can start with your own country. So that is going to be a regional online tutoring market, and then to immediately start up with that, you can start with your university or with your peers or with your relations. Importance of the market size: if you do have a large market size, it means that the revenue potential is really very high, and it's going to be more scalable. And obviously once you have all these features, it's going to bring more interest from the investors as well. Once you're going to ask the investors to invest some money into your startup business, so obviously they will be more attracted if you are going to reflect a large market size for your proposed idea and for your proposed startup. If we talk about the feasibility analysis, it evaluates whether a business idea can be successfully implemented or not. And there are different types of feasibility. One of the most important is the technical feasibility, which tells us about the technology availability. The other one is the market, which tells us about the customer demand. Another one is the financial, which tells us how much profitability we are going to get. So it's going to compare the revenue versus the cost parameters. And then our operational feasibility, whether we will be able to run or we have the capacity to run the business operations. So if we talk about the technical feasibility considers that is the required technology available, is right now available, or is it going to be available in near future or not. And then very important is, do we have the technical expertise? It's not necessary that you do have the technical expertise already available within your startup, but it's also concerned with your geographical bound. For example, do you have the technical expertise available in your country? If you want to have that, or in your jurisdiction, or in your area of influence, or globally, it could be. Because it often happens that you venture into a technology for which you are not going to find the technical human resource quite easily. Then can the system be built and maintained? Can you really build that system? Is the technology available so you can build that system? And eventually, can you maintain that system or not? There can be other issues as well. For example, you might encounter some regulatory requirements as well if you are dealing with some area which requires that. For example, if you're dealing with financial sector, so in many countries there are regulatory requirements from their governments or the government agencies which requires to have some certain type of technologies to be implemented or some certain type of constraints to be imposed. A country could have a policy that your financial data cannot be hosted onto a cloud or cannot be hosted out of your country. It's very common. So the example of this technical feasibility is if you talk about, let's say, for an AI startup, so we are going to see whether the data is available. Do we have the required computing infrastructure? And do we have the AI engineers available or not? Because if that required your human resource is not available, you are going to be in deep waters. Then computing infrastructure, whether it's available or not, how much is it going to cost? And then, like these days, we use a lot of cloud-based infrastructure, and cloud infrastructure, they are providing very good AI facilities, but it's expensive as well. So you are going to evaluate whether that AI infrastructure, if you will go in terms of cloud-based hosting, is it feasible for you or not? And the other challenge is to build your own AI-based infrastructure is quite expensive as well, which is going to require a lot of capital upfront investment, and that can be a challenge in terms of getting the investment from the investors. So you have to see all these things. Then you are going to see the market feasibility. So the market feasibility determines whether the customer really need that product, and if the customers they are going to pay for it, how much they are going to pay, and how many customers they are going to pay, how much large market sizes, and then you are going to also assess its scalability and other factors as well. So how you assess the market feasibility? You can do the customer discovery, you can have the customer interviews, you can conduct surveys with the customers or with the other stakeholders, and then eventually you can do the prototype testing, in which you can involve your customer to get a feedback onto the prototype that you have built, or it could be an already first version of your application or your product, and then you can get it tested, get it used by the customers, and based on their feedback you can improve that, and you can try to build a solution which solves the problem. Then there is financial feasibility. Financial feasibility, it checks what is the startup cost, and you check it over the long period of time. It's not only the capital upfront cost, like the cost that you are going to put upfront in the beginning when you are going to have your startup established, but also the cost spread over a year, at least 3 to 5 years, you are going to see that cost. Then how much is the revenue potential? Obviously, it's going to be based on your revenue model and the market size and your forecasting or your prediction, like how much market is going to grow in future. So you have to see that scalability and sustainability perspective as well. And very important perspective in that is that you are going to see when you are going to achieve the break-even point. And what is the break-even point? Break-even point is the point when your cost gets reduced as compared to the revenue, or your revenue exceeds your profit. Okay, the point when your revenue in a year exceeds your profit, that is called the break-even point, and that is the first point for which your startup they strives for, and that is usually a success, initial success for a startup if it reaches to a break-even point at a bit early point, and then needs to be sustainable and scalable. And after breaking the break-even point, it should be in profitability, and that profitability should increase over the period of time. An example is startup cost versus expected revenue. And we will see this quite in detail, the market research and the financial feasibility. We do have specific modules onto them because they required a lot of deliberation. So we are going to see so many different perspectives around the financial feasibility and similarly around the market research. Then we have the operational feasibility, which is concerned with the management operations of our startup. So it asks us that the company manage the operation. Do they have the capability to manage these operations, and you have to evaluate it with honesty and with a lot of deliberation. So you need to see whether do you have and your team has the capacity to manage the operations, to manage the team, to manage the people, because this is very important. A lot of startups they get broke because of lack of collaboration and because of the problems in the team conflicts. They break a lot of teams and eventually get that startup fail. Then you have to see that whether the resources to run the operations they are available or not, and does your team has the capacity to deliver the product or services effectively and can sustain that growth as well. Eventually, we have to also see and have to evaluate the risk in the startups as well. So, because all the startups they face risks, and usually we have discussed it early that usually the startups they have very high risk factors. So we have to assess the risks, and we have to do this activity to identify the potential problems, the challenges, the constraints, and based on that we have to develop mitigation strategies in which we are going to devise plans that how to face and how to avoid these problems and how to face these challenges, how to come up with the solutions which are going to lower the impact of any catastrophe or any challenge. So there are different types of startup risk again related to a bit related like our feasibility. We do have market research. It could be like customers may not buy our product or not willing to buy at this price, or the number of customers that we estimated are not enough. Our there were problems with our customer estimation. Then there could be technical risk that the technology that we are using might get failed or it might not be available. We were forecasting that the technology will be available by that time. For example, we are building a solution which is going to be based on 6G mobile communication technology, which is currently in research as of today and will be rolled out in a couple of years commercially. But the challenge is we have forecasted, okay, let's say it's going to be rolled out in coming 6 months, but after 6 months, that technology is will we found it out that technology was not available, so that might lead our startup to get failed. So we have to evaluate these things carefully. So it's a big technical risk. Then we can have financial risk. Our funding can get shorted. It could be due to various factors. One of the factors is that we could not secure the funding which we were anticipating, or we secure a funding, but at the time of delivery of that funding, the investor backed off or got some problem. They went into some financial trouble themselves, or not willing to invest. It could be a problem with our financial evaluation as well, because the budgets or the assessments they went wrong later on, and we are incurring more cost. So it can, so these type of risks they are going to be there. And then we can have an operational risk, which is because of poor management. Initially we thought yes we are going to be very good managers, but once we got the team, there are team conflicts and there are other issues which eventually could fail our startup. So we what we can do is we might get our team trained, have their organizational behavior trainings or leadership trainings and other stuff. So, what are the startup risk examples? Uh, if you look at the market size, market risk, startup launches a product, but no customer adopts it, or the market demand is low. So, what is the solution? That at the time of idea generation and evaluation and all this, you have to conduct a market research very early and very thoroughly, and you need to be really considerate about this thing, that you have to evaluate it very correctly. And then there can be a technical risk. With the technical risk, you have a AI product, for example, which requires large data set and very much advanced computing, but that technology was not available once you started running your startup. So what you have to do is you have to make the technology available beforehand. Similar is the problem is, okay, you could not get that large data set to have your AI models well trained. So that could be a problem because yeah, then you can be in a trouble, and the accuracy of your prediction could get affected because of having lesser amount of data in your data sets. That can be a big challenge. So you have to see this. The example of a financial risk is that your startup runs out of money before revenue begins. So you need to do very good financial planning. You have to invest carefully because, like startups, usually they are having scarcity of fund and the funding and the incoming capital investments. So it's always a big challenge. So you need to see this thing really very, very carefully and have to devise a strategy which is going to optimize your cost and need to be very good in terms of securing your funding. So what you have to do is try to assure that you have the investor funding available before you started actually working on to your startup, or at least in the early stages of your startup. Otherwise you can be in trouble if later on there are some problems with the availability of the financials. Then you can have operational risk. So the example of that is that management fails to manage the team or the operations. So you need to do is you have to do better operational planning, and also in the early stage you might require to have training of your team, because like it happens a lot. Many young entrepreneurs, especially students, they try to do or they try to have a startup early in the career. They are very young, and some of them they do not have any experience in working in any organization. So they do have certain behavioral patterns and they do have certain behavioral challenges. So our training could be a very good option in terms they can get trained and they can have a good managerial trainings through which they will be able to effectively manage their team. So this is very important. Like I told you before, yes, market risks are there. You need to have a good market feasibility, good technical feasibility, good financial feasibility, and not only the feasibility, you have to arrange the funds and all that. But a very important factor is also operation. This is the area which often got neglected, and eventually once the team is working and you have worked somehow for some time, because of the team conflicts, your startup that gets failed. So you need to be really considerate about this factor. So now we have an idea evaluation checklist. You need to see that. You have to check, does the idea solve a real problem? Then you have to see, is the market large enough? It should be, and sustain. And you have to see all those factors which we have discussed before, like sustainable, expandable, and scalable, and profitable, obviously. So you have to see this. And then is the technology feasible, or the feasible technology is available, and can it really generate the revenue? And very important factor is the risk manageable? Because okay, you saw the risks and still, and the risks are very high, and still you are trying to be in that business. So you need to see that, and you have to evaluate whether do you really want to venture into a very very high risk startup, or you are not willing to do that. So example of that evaluation is, for example, you do have a startup idea which is an AI based learning assistant. So you can see on various factors. For example, the factor of market demand, it results high. Yes, there is a high demand. Technical feasibility is moderate. Yes, you do have technologies available. Some of them they are coming. Okay, you will be able to develop that thing, and the risk is medium. So with all that, you're going to see it yourself because there is risk, but it's a medium risk. So as a high risk entrepreneur, you might conclude, okay, yes, it's a viable idea. But if the risk, let's say in the same example, is very high, we are probably not going to come up with this. We have to also see the financial factors and all that. For example, this is a very simplified version. Actually, we see a lot of things. For example, market demand, let's say it's high. Scalability is very high. Financials are early stage, let's say first year challenging, and we see like after 2 or 3 years it's very high, or and the risk is high. Again, we might go for this idea. Okay, we are going to say it's a viable idea. So there is no golden rule like which idea you're going to say that it's a viable or not. You're going to do brainstorm among your co-founders, and then you are going to come up with the final conclusion whether you are going to work on this idea or not. It's based on your, also based on your risk appetite as well. Risk appetite is the factor that how much risk you can absorb. So that's all for this, and this is the this class or module activity. You have to do a startup idea validation, and for that you have about an hour, and you have to work in a group. You have to identify 3 software-related problems. You're going to conduct customer interviews, and you are going to evaluate and validate the startup idea, and eventually you are going to come up with a conclusion whether you are going to work onto that idea or not. So you have to select actually 3 ideas. It's not going to be just one idea. So you're going to work into this. That's all for this module. This is starting point of your idea validation and evaluation. And like I said you before this module, we have already seen the idea generation. Now we have seen the early version of the idea validation, and after this we are going to see the other important areas like financials, and then the market analysis and business plan and all that. uh, Thank you very much for listening. Have a good time.